So
That's for
good.
sure.
Well,
Okay, we're going to get started. You guys done? Hello, Mike Kako, and good morning. Hope you and your Ohana are well. Thanks for coming. For those of you who are here in person or those online, I'm Mike Gabbard, State Senator for District 21, and which includes Kapolei, Makakilo, Kalailoa, and portions of Fernandez Village and Eva. And mahalo for joining us today. So we're coming to you live from the Villages of Kapolei Association's Rec Room number 2. And as you see, we start promptly at 9 and we'll be finishing promptly at 10. My father was in the air for 20 years, and I learned quite early that you are always on time. So he instilled that in me from a very young age. So I want to introduce my 2 full-time staffers. Actually, this is Melanie June. She's my community liaison. And Meg Turner, she's at home running the Zoom. Glad to have them both on board. And I also like to introduce Nadia Riggs. Nadia is the daughter of my former office manager, Rock Riggs, who worked with me for many, many years. He now is living in Oregon, and she worked for me as a legislative aide this past session. So she did a fantastic job. Thank you, and I hope you come back. So by the way, I call these community meetings listen story meetings because what I do is I try to listen carefully about what your concerns are. With one exception, with the meeting today is the wrap up of the 2025 session, which ended May 2nd. So I'll be doing most of the talking today. And if there's time at the end, we'll have Q&A. And if we do run out of time, no worries, just send me an email and then we'll be sure to follow up on what your issue, what your concern is. So let's jump in. So Melanie is going to be projecting the May newsletter. There's also a hard copy over here on the table. Please help yourself to the refreshments. So you can see on the chart that there were 3,172 bills introduced at our 2025 session. We always start the 3rd Wednesday of every January. So January 15th, which just happened to be my 77th birthday, is when we started this year. Still kicking. And yeah, so, and that 3,172 number is roughly about the same every year, roughly right around 3,000 bills that get introduced. And so of those, you can see 322 passed out of the Senate and the House. And as of May 5th, the governor has just begun reviewing them, and most of them are still pending action. And they're sitting on his desk right now, patiently waiting for some kind of action, his next move. So what happens next? If the governor signs the bill by July 9th, then the bill automatically becomes law. If the governor doesn't sign or veto by July 9th, then the bill automatically becomes law without his signature. If the governor intends to veto, he must notify the legislature by June 24th and then formally deliver the veto by July 9th. And if he does decide to veto, it will not become law unless the legislature overrides it during a special session. And you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate and in the House to override the governor's veto. And in order to do that, there has to be a special session no later than July 9th. So stay tuned for those of you that had bills that you were watching carefully and were monitoring and were either disappointed or elated over. Yeah, it's not over yet. All right, so that's, I just completed my 9th year as the chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, Agriculture and Environment Committee, also known as AEN. And one of my biggest priorities over the years has been the Hawaiian term malama aina, taking care of the land and the oceans that surround us. And so for those of you that don't know, and also supporting the local food systems, I've really been focusing on food systems. And if you don't know, a sustainable food system is a food system that delivers food security and nutrition for everybody. And so the food system includes everything from producing, processing, packaging, and transporting of the food to consumers. So I'll start off with some highlights and lowlights of the AEN bills that passed and some that didn't. And then I'll talk about some non-AEN bills that passed and some that didn't. And so again, if you don't get your questions answered today, you'll have the YouTube recording and you can just email your question and then we'll get back to you. Also, I wanted to put a plug in for our website. Most of you may know about that, and it's capital.hawaii.gov, and that's capital with the O, And it's an amazing website. You can just punch in your bill number, and then you'll get all the details on the bill, all the hearings, all the testimony, what happened to the bill, etc. So yeah, I urge you to check that out if you haven't already. So let's jump right in. My number one priority for this session, all these bills, they have nicknames that we attached to them, was the Sustainable Food Systems Working Group. And as you can see there at the top, it creates a working group to develop an interagency statewide food systems plan to increase Hawaii's food self-sufficiency and reduce reliance on imported food. It was not only this last session, but this has been my top priority for the last 3 sessions. And by the way, Gov, if you're watching this today, don't make it 4 sessions. Please sign the bill. And the backstory on this is that as the AEN chair for many years, you know, sometimes it's frustrating when bills take so long to pass. And the plus side, of course, is that it helps improve my patience and my determination. But I'm sure many of you have heard the soundbite for years. We import 85 to 90% of our food at a cost of $3 billion every year. Yeah, you guys are nodding. You've heard that. It's on the news all the time. And so to put things in context, the total amount of acreage in Hawaii, 4.1 million acres of land. The total acres designated as specifically as ag land is 1.9 million acres. Now, how many acres are presently being used for farming? About 1.1 million. So guess what? That leaves about 800,000 acres designated ag lands that are available to grow food. So obviously we need to grow farmers, and that's a topic for another time. We'll go into that. Ma'o Farms out on the west side is doing a fantastic job, and we'll get into that at a different meeting. Hopefully this next, remind me, Mel, we can do that the next meeting. So we've done a few things over the years to address the problem, right? In 2005, we passed the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan, and that highlights Hawaii's overall economic crisis, the climate crisis, food system related goals. And then in 2019, we passed Act 151, which mandates doubling local food production and increasing food exports by the year 2030. And then in 2021, we passed Act 175. Once the law is passed, they become an act, right? So we passed Acts 175 and 176, which set goals for local food procurement in schools and other government entities with a target of 50% locally sourced food by the year 2050. Okay, we've done that. So that's good, right? And it's helpful, but what's the plan? What's the overall plan? And as I said, for the last 3 years, I've been introducing bills to set up a working group to come up with the plan, and nothing passed. So last year in 2024, following our usual protocol, so when bills don't pass for us, then we will often introduce a resolution, or what's called a reso, to keep the discussion going. So it's not a law, right? But it's a message to legislators and the general public that this is a concept that's important to those legislators who are signing on to it. So I introduced in 2024, Senate Reso 111, requesting the Department of Ag to establish a sustainable food systems working group to develop an interagency food systems plan, right? Because you can't just have Department of Ag, right? You want to get the tourism agencies involved. You want to get the Department of Business and Economic Development involved. So at the end of the session last year, it passed out of the Senate and was adopted. And then miraculously out of the blue, the Department of Ag called me on the phone and said, Senator, we want to get rolling on SR 111. I said, what do you mean rolling? Well, we got some funding and we want to help you get this thing going. I said, really? Because usually with resos, you know, they just kind of, okay, everybody, okay, that's nice. And just kind of, you know, since it's not a law, people don't really take it that seriously. But I was just ecstatic after that phone call with them. And so the working group started a working group and got together during the interim between sessions. And then the working group submitted a report to the legislature in December of 2024. And one of the recommendations from that working group was to craft a bill that would allow us to continue the work that they started. And voila, lo and behold, Senate Bill 1186 was born, and basically patterned after the rest of it had passed. So what this bill does, 1186, it establishes a statewide interagency food systems coordination team and an interagency food systems working group within the Agribusiness Development Corporation, or ADC. That's basically a group that was formed, I think it was back in the 90s, to basically, there were thousands and thousands of acres of former pineapple and sugarcane land, right? So everybody was saying, what are we going to do with this? How can we build? So they formed ADC to start actively working on what to do with the lands and to grow agribusiness in Hawaii. So ADC is the one in charge of it. It's within the ADC, and which makes sense because our working group was led by DBED, Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism, and ADC is administratively attached to DBED. And they appropriated $100,000 for staff and operating costs of the team. So I'm smiling. I'm going, wow, not only did they give us this, but they gave us some money to help pay for staff. So now that bill is on the governor's desk. And as I mentioned, he has until July 9th to sign it or declare his intent to veto it by June 24th. And if he does that, it will go into effect July 1st this year. So, and the working group, it consists of the board, the chairman of the Board of Agriculture, the director of DBED, and then also one member from the House of Representatives, one member from the Senate, and then other members that can be invited by the co-chairs. And then what they will do is they are outline what they're supposed to do, and that is develop governance, decision-making, and operating protocols. Coordinate, number two, coordinate with county and community-led organizations that are involved with food systems planning. So it's not just this state thing. We're saying we're going to do this, and the county's going, what about us? The counties are involved. The food, Hawaii Farm Bureau is involved, right? There's the conventional farmers. Hawaii Farmers Union is involved. Those are the organic guys, right? So you have both of those groups involved in this process. So anyway, yeah, very happy about that one passing. So the second bill I wanted to describe is SB 1249. Right there, yeah. Okay, so this act shall be known and may be called as, cited as Duke's Law in memory of Cranston Duke Pia. It establishes a 2-year pilot program within the Department of Law Enforcement focused on investigating and prosecuting agriculture theft and vandalism and improving security for farmers. So Duke Pia, he was a 39, you may have seen this in the news, 39-year-old Makaha rancher who was murdered. I get a little bit emotional on this one because the family came into the office to ask me for help on getting this bill passed. He was murdered in front of his mother. And what he was doing was protecting his cattle from hunting dogs on February 17th, 2024, last year. He died of a single gunshot wound to his head. And a guy named Chanston Pila Kikawa, a 17-year-old from Maili, from the west side, he was charged as an adult with second-degree murder, first-degree terroristic threatening, firearm offenses, and first-degree theft. He pleaded not guilty, and he was indicted on September 24th for second-degree murder. So as I mentioned, this bill, what it does is it establishes the Ag Enforcement Pilot Program within the Department of Law Enforcement. And this is, since it's a pilot, it's just on the islands of Oahu and on the Big Island. And what these guys are supposed to do is to clarify, create, and strengthen laws regarding crimes and violations related to ag or agricultural lands and hunting on private ag lands. Secondly, establish clear distinctions between administrative and criminal penalties. Third, appropriates $949,856 for each of the fiscal years, the one coming up that starts July 1st and the next one. So the fact that we've got over about $1 million in for the next 2 years to do this shows you how serious we as a legislature about doing something about this issue. You know, we talked earlier about all that vacant ag land that's there, and farming as a career doesn't look too attractive if you're reading about this that farmers are getting murdered on their land, right? So this is really a very important bill. Also, they approved 9 full-time employees to be in charge and work on this issue with the working group. It goes into effect. And the reason I bring this up, sometimes people are like, well, why do you always mention that? It's because sometimes bills don't go into effect for 5 or 10 years. This goes into effect July 1st this year. And again, it shows you how important we feel this bill is. And then the bill is 63 pages long. So again, capital.hawaii.gov. If you want the details, go there. And yeah. The third bill is SB 1396, Climate Mitigation and Tourism Funding is the nickname we gave this one. I kind of like the one with the informal name is the Green Fee Bill. And for me, this is a no-brainer. I think 2019, before the pandemic started, we had 10 million tourists, and it's been right around there for the last few years. Using our beaches, our trails, our roads, and quite frankly, I've talked with many of them, and also my family members who come from the mainland, and they wholeheartedly support helping us keep paradise paradise. We heard from the tourism board and some of the tourism authorities saying, "Oh, we can't do this because our tourists are going to go to the Caribbean." Hey, we live in Hawaii. They're going to come here. I've been to the Caribbean. I've been here. This is the place. And so anyway, so right now we already levy a 10.25% tax on short-term rentals. As of January 1st, I'll call the TAT, the Transient Accommodation Tax. As of January 1st, that will bump up to 11%. And it also imposes a new 11% tax on cruise ship bills, prorated for the number of days those vessels are here in Hawaii ports. So I thought that's a great idea. You have all these cruise ships coming in. Hey, they come in and do the same thing, use all of our environmental beautiful places to visit and everything. Why not? And so the officials estimate that this will generate approximately $100 million annually. Think about that, $100 million annually. And so these funds will be used to protect, manage, and restore the state's natural resources, including native forests, native plants and animals, aquatic resources, coastal lands, and freshwater resources. This, right from the bill, this increases the resilience of structures and infrastructure to natural and climate-related disasters. It also improves the visitor experience, mitigates the impacts of tourism on the natural environment, ensures the state's natural resources are maintained for future residents and visitors. And so funding for these projects that I just mentioned also include like replenishing the sand on the Waikiki. If you follow that, it's some serious stuff going on down there, losing our beaches, and also promoting the use of hurricane clips to secure roofs during powerful storms, and also clearing flammable invasive grasses like those that led to the deadly fire on Maui at Lahaina. So experts say that this is the first bill of its kind in the US. And think about that, that $100 million is going to be going, the tourists are going to be paying is less tax dollars that you're going to be paying, right? And so this is very happy. And the governor's already said he's going to sign this bill. Really happy this has happened. Next, just checking my time here. HB 879, cesspool conversion grants. This increases the maximum grant amount. Actually, this, Mel, you can make a note of this. This is from an earlier draft of the bill before it got to conference. So basically, for those of you who don't know, a cesspool is nothing more than a hole in the ground that discharges raw, untreated human waste. And so cesspools, they can contaminate groundwater, drinking water sources, streams and oceans with disease-causing pathogens, algae-causing nutrients, and other harmful substances. So untreated wastewater from these cesspools contains all kinds of bad stuff. So how many cesspools do we have in Hawaii? According to the wastewater branch, Department of Health, there are about 88,000 cesspools in Hawaii, with nearly 50,000 on the Big Island, almost 14,000 on Kauai, over 12,000 on Maui, and about 11,000 on Oahu, and 1,400 on Molokai. And let's localize it a little more. As of September of 2024, there are 72 cesspools in my Senate district right here, and over 1,000 cesspools in Ewa Beach. So 43,000 of those 88,000 cesspools pose a risk to our water resources. So, and listen to this now. They release approximately 53 million gallons of untreated sewage into our ground each day. So they have obviously have a significant impact on our drinking water. And so, and by law, actually, this passed in 2017, all these cesspools, they must be upgraded to a septic tank or hooked up to sewer lines, city and county sewer, by January 1st, 2050. And we are currently as 2050. We've been kind of pushing that to move it up to 2035 just to, and some of the bills that it costs between $25,000 and $40,000 to upgrade your cesspool to a septic tank. And so it's not cheap. And so we've been passing bills that, in fact, this bill originally had a tax credit for like $20,000 to help homeowners upgrade to these septic tanks or to hook up to a sewer line. So in this one, this bill was changed in conference committee. For those of you who don't know, after the bills have had all the hearings, then they go into what's called the conference committee of the Senate and the House near the end of the session, and you try to work out the differences, try to compromise, and come up with a final bill that each chamber will vote on. So what happened with this one, they changed it so it adds a $76,000 for this fiscal year and next fiscal year for a permanent engineer 3 position within the Department of Health to assist with the upgrade and conversion of cesspools and perform any other related responsibilities that are designated. So I also want to point out that keep in mind that when bills don't make it, it's not like we say, okay, that's done, let's go on to something else. Sometimes bills take a number of years to pass. And that's why I was saying patience and determination. So I know constituents have gotten involved in getting bills passed, and 1 year passes, 2 years, but they start getting angry and they start calling Mel and screaming at her. And Mel will say, boss, it's for you. But the thing is, what we need to do is, okay, during the interim, session is from the mid-January to the first week in May. During that time, from May until next January, that's the time we get together, talk story. Hey, what about if we add this? Or what about if we take that out, etc. That's what you do. Okay, so, all right, then the next one is the Food Hub Pilot Program. This measure extends funding for Hawaii's Food Hub Pilot Program, helping local farms aggregate, process, and distribute fresh produce to boost food security. So for those of you who don't know, Food Hub is a centralized facility that plays a crucial role in connecting local farmers and producers with consumers and markets. So these hubs, they provide essential services such as storage, distribution, marketing, enabling small scale and traditional farmers to increase their access to local markets. So we started a pilot program for Food Hubs in 2022. This bill provides $1.5 million for the biennium for the next 2 fiscal years, and it's effective July 1st. Currently, there are 14 food hubs in Hawaii, and each of the islands, the only island that does not have a food hub is Lanai. So this is a real plus for our farmers, just helping the farmers so they don't have to do all the stuff, right? And next, HB 427, HD2, SD2 is biosecurity enhancements. It renames the Department of Agriculture as the Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity, establishes a deputy chairperson for biosecurity, authorizes the declaration of biosecurity emergencies, and transfers the Hawaii Invasive Species Council to the Department of Ag in 5 years. So again, this is one of those bills. It's 88 pages long. Go to the website if you want the details. But essentially what this does is it aims to centralize the efforts to protect Hawaii's unique ecosystems and agricultural resources, which are increasingly threatened by invasive pests and plant diseases. You've seen on the news, I'm sure, coconut rhinoceros beetles. They're devastating our coconut trees. It's just, they've even infiltrated down to Waikiki, and the Waikiki Neighborhood Board, they're freaking out because some of the coconut palms are just totally obliterated by these guys. So little fire ants, that's another one. Coqui frogs who came here originally from Puerto Rico, and then many invasive plants. Many years ago, I was invited to go to Maui and take a look how one invasive plant, Myconia, was destroying local plants and local trees, specifically ohia trees. And a guy over there, he came up with an invention, HBT, herbicide, putting that HBT in the paintballs, going up in a helicopter, going deep into the forest, and then shooting the paintballs into where those Myconia plants are growing. So I got to go up in the helicopter with him, and it was just amazing. Here, Senator, your turn. I was like, right over there. Oh, you missed it. Go back. But it was amazing the difference it has made to protect our native ohia trees from this invasive Myconia plants. But that's the kind of imagination and creativity that we need to take care of it. Who knows what we're going to be doing for these CRBs, the coconut rhinoceros beetles. But so by doing that, adding biosecurity to the Department of Ag, I think it's going to work out really well. It's interdepartmental collaboration. It's the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Department of Ag, Department of Health, Department of Transportation, DBED again, and UH. They're all involved in this new department. And also it inserts $4.2 million for this fiscal year to DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, and also to the Department of Ag. And so they'll also be inserting, that's for the Hawaii Invasive Species Council. And they'll be transferring over the Hawaii Invasive Species Council. They're the group that's overall in charge of all these critters and plants that are coming to Hawaii. But we also put in $500,000 for the Hawaii Ant Lab, and then $500,000 for the CRB response, people who are doing that under UH. So good funding for that. So really happy to see this pass as well. Next is HB 736, a wastewater system technology pilot. And this establishes a 3-year pilot program within the UH Water Resources Research Center to test new wastewater system technologies with interim and final reports to the legislature. So basically, this is this pilot program. We put in $745,000 to implement this new pilot program, which will help out on our water resources. And it's also effective July 1st. Now, the next one is HB 505, Red Hill Remediation. Establishes a Y policy coordinator, and Y stands for Water Alliance Initiative. It is a coalition of state and county leaders that form this group. So this establishes a coordinator for coordinating the Red Hill initiatives and creates the Red Hill Remediation Special Fund to address contamination issues from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. So you've probably aware that over the last 80 years, there have been numerous spills at the Red Hill facility. Specifically on November 20th of 2021, about 93,000 individuals who serve in the U.S. Navy on their potable water system at Pearl Harbor Hickam. They were directly affected when there was a leak. in one of the shafts there and was contaminated. Up to 19,000 gallons of fuel went into the water system. And all these folks you may have seen on the news, the lawsuit that has been filed, there's folks are not pleased with how that's turning out, but hopefully it's not a done deal yet. But over 6,000 individuals sought medical attention, and about 1,000 were forced to leave their homes due to the contamination. So in November of 2023, that's when the Red Hill Y was formed, again, the Water Alliance Initiative. And they released a final report in November of 2023, calling for an integrated approach to remediating the site, monitoring the ecosystems. And they basically made a recommendation. The recommendations for their fix, the changes that need to be made, came out to $750 million, which they also recommended should be paid for by the federal government, since it was their mistakes that caused this to happen. So what this bill does, it amends the definition of the Red Hill Water Alliance Initiative to include the Deputy for Water Resource Management among the individuals in the group. So that's from the Department of Health. So that they want to get everybody involved in fixing this issue, right? Okay, let's see. And then recycling. SB 1298 makes Hawaii's e-waste law bigger by covering more gadgets, tightening up makers' recycling plans, and also letting the Department of Health decide fines. So what this does is it amends the Electronic Device Recovery Act. It expands to include electronic devices to include peripherals like mouses and all the other stuff that go along with computers, et cetera. Excludes manufacturers of only electronic device peripherals and no other electronic devices. It allows, rather than requires, the Department of Health to determine additional penalties and impose certain fines. And it requires manufacturers' recycling plans to describe communication efforts with the state and counties to facilitate consumer education efforts. So that's good. It's, and a whole bunch of other things as well that are included. And then lastly, as far as these AEN bills have passed, HB 774, this bill plants the seeds for a food and product innovation network on our Agribusiness Development Corporation, ADC. It brings farmers, researchers, and small business Ohana together to cook up new, locally made products. And we've also investing in our health experts at DOH, Department of Health, to keep everything safe in Pono. And by backing homegrown innovation, we lift our farm incomes, strengthen food security, and spark island-style entrepreneurship. Okay, so this, by doing this, this is going to enable businesses to scale up their products and also expands Hawaii-related branding to include Hawaii Made. I'm sure you probably all have figured it out that the Hawaii branding is also very important when it's out there. When you got the, I remember I was at a hemp conference in Kentucky a few years ago, and all the Kentucky hemp farmers were bragging about how they were going to take over the whole hemp market nationally. And all the, because with hemp, you can, I got involved in helping Hawaii get our hemp growing here, get it going. And when I was at that conference in Kentucky, they were strutting around, and I just, because you can make 25,000 different products with hemp, whether it's hemp granola or hemp shoes. On my desk, for example, I've got a block of hempcrete. It's concrete instead of concrete, it's hempcrete. And the beauty of hempcrete is that it breathes, no mildew, and it's made from plants, and all kinds of things you can do with hemp. So these guys, these farmers in Kentucky were strutting around, we're going to do this. And at the closing dinner, I got up and hit my fork on the glass, and I said, excuse me, we're just getting our program going in Hawaii, and who's going to buy your Kentucky shampoo when you can get Hawaii hula grown shampoo with the hula girl dancing on the label? I said, who's going to buy tell me? And they all kind of looked around at each other. sit down, Gabbard, sit down, Hawaii. But that's a fact, and we all know that people are very much attracted to the Hawaii made, Hawaii grown label. So let me go into a few of the AEN ag bills that failed. Number one, SB 552, Healthy Soils, supports Hawaii's farmers by expanding the Healthy Soils program, helping them boost soil health, increase food production, and fight climate change through regenerative practices. The bill passed the Senate, but it failed to get a hearing in the Finance Committee, the Money Committee in the House. So I mentioned this earlier, think about it. In 1980, Hawaii we had 14 sugar and 4 pineapple plantations that farmed more than 300,000 acres. Think about that. 300,000 acres. That was in 1980. And by 2017, those 2 crops only accounted for about 5,000 acres. So think about what the tons of pesticides that were injected into the soils back during the 80s. All right, so what is the status? What's the status of that soil? That's why I've introduced this Healthy Soil Bill for a few years. And again, it did not pass. Yeah. So the point is, by doing this, one of the first things is to do an assessment of all that ag land. Remember I mentioned we had about 80,000 acres that's available. Find out what the condition is, right? And then, so this bill, establishes and funds a program to the Department of Ag that sets standards and compiles information on most effective practices. It also assists farmers in implementing those strategies, gives educational technical assistance to the farmers to adopt healthy soil practices, updates the soil data and mapping initiatives, etc. So as I said, it passed the Senate, and also it passed the ag committees in the House, but then it died in finance. And let me just add that after chairing the ag committee and ag environment committee for 9 years, one of the things you learn when you get elected to office is how important relationships are, right? So because when your bills are up and they're important bills that that are going to help people, like in this example, help farmers, right? Help increase our food production locally, so we're not having to import 85 to 90% at $3 billion every year. It's important that you get along with people. You're not always going to agree on everything, but you try your best to get along. And so, but again, this one died in Finance Committee, so we'll come back next year and we'll talk to the Finance Committee. We'll talk and see if, was it just they ran out of time, or see if there was a reason why they didn't okay this bill at the very end. And so next one is the CTAR extension agents. CTAR is the College of Tropical Ag and Human Resources at UH. This bill would have made 2 farm to school extension agents at UH Manoa permanent and created a new ag education coordinator, boosting our efforts to connect local farms with schools and teach Keiki about growing Aina-friendly food. It passed the Higher Ed Committee in the Senate, and unfortunately it didn't get a hearing in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, so it stalled there. One of ag's biggest challenges, of course, is finding people to farm, as I mentioned. And so one of my punchlines that I use at the speeches that I give, especially to young people, is that farming is a noble profession, no less noble than being a doctor or a lawyer. And that, it's the average farmer in Hawaii is 60 years old. So until we actually, on the mainland, it's like 58. In Canada, it's like 55. And so, it's a difficult profession to get into and to sustain and to attract these young people who are. One of the pluses, though, that's happened is because of the tech stuff that's happening, the innovation that's happening, that is helping young people get involved, right? Yeah.
The construction industry is turning like that.
Yeah.
You walk into Home Depot and watch the average age of the guys buying stuff.
Yeah.
They're all over 60.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. Okay. So do farm to school staffing. Would have created new permanent farm to school staff positions for the Department of Ed. And also at UH, this one died in the Educational, Labor, and Technology Committees.
Question.
Yes.
Already.
Yeah, use that.
Are schools already partnering with like the high schools or to make any some small agricultural projects in the school? The reason I'm asking is I'm a retired teacher. Back in the 1990s, my school, Mount Atlantic, partnered with Campbell High School's ag department, and the teacher there brought his Future Farmers of America to our school. They helped us make a garden and helped us plant real simple green beans and cabbage plants. And once in school, we did in class and they ate it. So, and I think other schools have this project too.
Yeah, but it's not, they've started, but what these bills do, it expands on that to other schools so we can do this statewide. For example, in 2021, we passed Act 175, and that established a target goal, listen to this, for public schools to serve 30% locally produced food by the year 2030, right? That's 5 years away. 30% by 2030. I checked with the Department of Ag and DOE, we're at 6%. And so that's why we need to, do more to get the schools and get the administration involved in some of these projects. For example, school meals, Senate Bill 235 would let individual complex area and schools set up their own farm to school meal program. See, instead of just having this blanket, they let the schools, right? Because that way, for example, here you've got farmers that surround the Kapolei area, have a relationship, right? Kapolei High School, you have a relationship, Kapolei Middle, Kapolei Elementary, whatever. With these farmers, they can start growing the crops that would feed directly into those schools. It makes sense. So that's the goal here. That's what we're trying to do. To increase, I'm not saying we're going to reach that 30% by 2030, but it definitely would make a difference. Okay, and then number 6, SB 504, transportation tax reimbursement. This creates a local ag transportation cost reimbursement program at the Department of Ag, so ranchers and farmers can recoup part of their expenses, moving livestock, crops, and supplies. So obviously a big issue for our farmers is transportation, the cost. So this bill creates a local ag cost reimbursement program at the Department of Agriculture so that ranchers and farmers can recoup at least part of their expenses as they're moving the livestock or the crops and supplies around. Okay. This one here, SB 558, Food and Product Innovation Network. This one creates a network within the ADC to help farmers and entrepreneurs develop value-added products like jams, jellies, sauces, packaged foods, boosting local ag and small business growth. Passed the Senate, but failed to get a hearing in the Finance Committee in the House. And then we have pesticide buffer zones. That's SB 352. Research shows that having a half-mile buffer zone can help protect kids from pesticide exposures. This bill would have standardized how DOA reports these RUPs, restricted use pesticides, amounts, and created a half-mile buffer zone around schools during class hours and public parks. This one passed through the Senate, but it also died in the House Agriculture Committee. And then the last one I want to talk about as far as bills that didn't pass was the Green Amendment, SB 559. This measure would have enshrined in our Constitution the right of all people and future generations to clean water and air, a healthful environment and climate, healthy native ecosystems and beaches. And after a strong AEN committee, that's my committee, endorsement, the bill stalled and ultimately died in the Senate Judiciary and Ways and Means Conference committees. So that one, and I've introduced this bill a number of times over the years, called the Green Amendment. I think Montana, New York, and Pennsylvania are the ones that have passed this, because we say this in our Constitution. Our Hawaii Constitution, it says the state must protect natural resources, but it doesn't clearly state that the people have a guaranteed right to clean air, water, and healthy ecosystems. So when you elevate this to a constitutional amendment, then everyone here is going to get a chance to vote on this on the ballot. And in other words, we take it more seriously, protecting our environment. So hopefully we'll get it done next session. And then finally, before we open it up for a few questions, I wanted to mention a few bills that did not pass, specifically that are non-AN related. And if you live here in Kapolei, in the villages of Kapolei, SB 662, this aimed to resolve a decades-long issue by mandating the transfer of public roads within the villages of Kapolei from the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, HHFDC, to the city and county of Honolulu by January 1st, 2026. However, this bill was later amended to focus solely on enhancing public safety. The current version authorizes county police officers to enforce the statewide traffic code on all public streets, roadways, and highways, regardless of jurisdiction, be it federal, state, or county. So let me give you the backstory on this. Since the 1990s, the state agency, HHFDC, they built 24 miles of roads here in Kapolei, in the villages of Kapolei. They're called them limbo roads. Well, guess why they call them limbo? Because the city decided not to accept it. Because what happens when the state pays for something, they want to turn it over to the city and county, because your city, your taxes, your county taxes pay, your local taxes pay for those, right? Well, city and county of Honolulu decided not to accept those roads, those state roads, state-built roads. They said they were not acceptable. Were not up to the city and county standards. So here you are paying city taxes, city and county taxes, and there's no maintenance, no traffic enforcement, and there's plenty of potholes, abandoned cars, broken signs, and overgrown weeds. So this session, your representative, Diamond Garcia, doing a great job as far as I'm concerned, for District 42, which includes Kapolei. He approached me to introduce Senate Bill 662, which included two parts. Number one, it requires the HHFDC to transfer those roads to the city and county by January 1st, 2026. In other words, give them some time, right? And then the second part of the bill empowers county police to enforce the statewide traffic code on all public roads. So that solves both the ownership and the safety issues, right? Two parts to the bill. So Rep. Garcia introduced the companion bill in the House. That was House Bill 157. Now, what a companion bill is, it's exactly the same bill as the Senate. So you have two bills exactly alike, one in the House, one in the Senate. And the reasoning behind introducing both of them is, if one bill dies in the other chamber, you still have a vehicle that's still alive, and hopefully that can make it through, right? So,
Mike,
was
Mike, my name is Gregory Peterson, and the question I have regarding that is,
Greg, Greg, let me finish just describing this, because I know you were following this very closely. So what happened was HB 157 had passed through the two committees, Housing and Transportation, but then it died, guess where? In the House Judiciary Committee in February. So meanwhile, in the Senate, my bill that I introduced, that two-part plan unanimously passed in March. So we were on track to deliver to Kapolei residents a permanent solution to this problem. So in mid-March, the House committees, they removed part one of the bill, and the state to county transfer deadline. And what they said was there was a $20 million funding gap. The city, they wanted $60 million from the state to bring up the roads to code. And HHFDC, the state group, they offered $40 million. So there's this $20 million. Well, who's going to pay that? So the House, they changed the bill and only accepted, they cut out part one, the transfer, and only accepted the part two, the police enforcement language in the bill. So I was told that HHFDC, the state agency, they've been maintaining these roads at a cost of about $1 million every year. And they've been diverting some of their funds from other affordable housing projects, which is their main kuleana, right? And so as conference committees began, and then again, that's where the House and Senate tries to work out their differences, I was pushing in the conference committee to restore the state and city transfer mandate, that's part one, and arguing on that our community deserves long-term ownership clarity. And the House negotiators, they held firm that no unfunded mandate could stand. In other words, because that $20 million was left up in the air, we can't do it. Okay, so with time running out, we agreed to pass the enforcement piece only, so the police can immediately start ticketing speeders, towing abandoned vehicles, ensuring the public safety code applies everywhere. And so the road transfer issue will be revisited later. So once the governor hopefully signs this bill, the county officers can start writing their tickets and doing the towing and whatever needs to be done. So our next steps is urging the governor to sign this bill without delay, number one, and then also convening a Kapolei Road task force to nail down repair funding and timeline for the transfer. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we'll reintroduce this next session to take part of the transfers. Now, online, you had a question about that? Is it Peter?
Yes, I did. So the Mike Formby, the
Transportation.
yes,
Yeah.
and this debate in terms of you talked about the $20 million discrepancy. The city said this, the upkeep of these roads is going to be $100 million, and they gave a discount. They negotiated or said they would give a discount, and the question is why didn't the states, agree to that? It boggles my mind that this thing has been going on for so long.
Yeah.
And I suggest that make a bill to give a tax relief to the homeowners and residents of Kapolei, because this has been going on too long, and this back and forth. You can you give me a end date when this possibly the turnover can happen, because this is not kosher to the residents of Kapolei.
I hear you, Peter. And I guarantee you that we will revisit this next session. We can't do anything now, but we will revisit this next session. And then I appreciate your input. And yeah, we'll get back to you, okay? I do want to finish, as we're running out of time. I wanted to mention a couple of non-ag bills, non-AEN bills that failed. HB 1308, sports betting. You may have followed that one. It sets up a system to legalize and regulate sports betting in Hawaii. Supporters say it'll help bring in revenue and crack down on illegal gambling. I voted no on it. I'm concerned about what this could mean for our keiki and kupuna, and a place in Hawaii where addiction, mental health, and family stability are already tough issues. My feeling was we have to be careful about this. So this bill died in conference. Yeah, there was a conference committee. I think we had over 2,000 people that sent in testimony on this. Right, Mel? We had a lot of, primarily most of it against. And so again, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to revisit this, I'm sure that it will be revisited next session. And with that, I will, we've got a few minutes left. I will open it up to any questions that you have. Usually we have about half hour, but clearly we just,
I was glad to see there was more money for coconut rhinoceros.
Yes.
Because I don't think you can claim to be a tropical paradise if you don't have any palm trees.
that's right. Good point. Yeah, I thought about that too. And I think people, when you start thinking about that, right? And the places that the CRBs have run wild, you know, they're just going, why didn't we do something earlier? Why did, you know? So now it's kind of like, you know, they're not on all the islands yet. And we just got to up our game. Yes, Rose?
I wanted to know, I'm not a hunter, so maybe I just don't understand it. Why do hunters need an assault style weapon to go hunting? Do they need to shoot 100 bullets at the pig?
Thank you, Rose. And I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the ones I was going to, and I'll just describe this and then we'll end our meeting on based on this. And she's speaking about SB 401, which was introduced by the Judiciary Chair. I'm the Vice Chair of the Judiciary Committee. So the chair introduced this bill. Basically, you have it up there?
Second.
Yeah, assault, yeah. So to ban assault style weapons, but drew pushback from rural communities. And so what this did is ban firearms or rifles with capacity to fire ammunition of 50 caliber or higher. And it did not include, the original bill did not include antique pistols, antique revolvers. And so, but late in the session, Senator Linda Coit, who's a farmer from Molokai, she offered a floor amendment and added wide exemptions for weapons and magazines acquired before the January 1st, 2026 cutoff, but it also allowed licensed dealers to service grandfathered guns. It protected subsistence hunters. Since she's a farmer, she was mentioning this was one of the main issues for them, access deer on the neighbor islands. And then also when they're slaughtering their pigs, that once you start shooting and you run out of on your magazine, you're limited to only 10 on your magazine, that affects their, yeah, well. So anyway, the amendment that she introduced, it was the last day and it passed 13-12. There's 25 senators. And that essentially killed the bill. So what happened at that, the president recommitted the bill to the committees and then it died in the House as well when that happened. So basically that's the gist of what happened on that particular bill. So some, as you can imagine, the gun associations, et cetera, were very much opposed to this. They were very vocal in their opposition, both by email, in person, et cetera.
Why do they shoot so many bullets at the pig?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. They try to use.
You shoot one though, see, the argument is you shoot one, then all the other ones, they start running away. Then you got to go after, one by one. Whereas if you can just like this, right? I'm a vegan, so but that's not only why I voted against the bill, but the reasons there were stated. Yes.
Back to the 427 biosecurity enhancements.
Yes.
How fast do they plan to move on the CRB? Because we've witnessed devastation on the North Shore of Oahu with the CRB. And we've also had our own trees treated on our property as well, because due to a neighbor urging us to do it because they saw signs of the CRB as well. So how fast will all this move? And the public, I think, needs to be made much more aware. I know there are commercials on TV and everything, and certainly golf courses as well.
Yeah. I wish I could give you a definite answer. I will, as again, the chair of the Ag Environment Committee, I will definitely, it's definitely on my high priority list because I've seen, and as you see what's happening, and we don't want this to continue. But the good thing about it is with that bill is that the money's there. We've actually put money into this to do something about it. So that means it lets you know how serious we as legislators are about doing something about this problem. Yeah. And it's both in the House and the Senate, and I'm sure the governor's on board too. Other question? Okay, we're out of time, so we'll take one more question before we call it the day.
Senator Gabbard, firstly, thanks very much for the summarization in your newsletter. It's very helpful
Sure.
for those of us that don't follow this on the routine. A lot of the bills that you mentioned that passed come with what I would call overhead. A lot of personnel positions being created, some are going to be formed from existing personnel. Is there fear that pressure to downsize government, which tends to be fewer people, are going to compromise the potential of all of these bills that are passed with people associated?
Really good point. Absolutely. And especially with what's happening with the federal government as far as funding. And so we're actually our Senate president, and I know the House Speaker is also, we're anticipating coming back into session in either August or September, a special session to once it hits the fan, right? And we find out exactly how it's going to affect all of these. Yeah. So the biggest problem that we had is we didn't know, so we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. We don't know how those changes are going to affect our local. Yeah. So good question. Okay. So thank you all very much for coming, and stay in touch. We haven't nailed down. We will have one in June, a community meeting, a listen story meeting. Well, I will do most of the listening, but thank you for coming, and happy Mother's Day tomorrow to all the mothers. Thank you for all you do, moms, and all you have done, all the sacrifices. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Aloha. Yeah. And aloha online too. So see you later. Sorry.
I brought that